Every day we get closer to the removal of Alexandria Ocasio Cortez from Congress. In just 4 months from today, we will see a primary in her district, and she is facing several Democratic primary challengers. This is the first pitfall. She only got around 17,000 votes in the first primary, and she knows she could be removed, going as far as to say, I'm not going to come here every 2 years asking for your votes. I want to invest in this community. That quote alone says to me she knows she might not win this primary. Outside of that, she's facing a ton of Republican challengers in the general election. Now, I'm not super worried for her in that regard because I'm not sure a Republican could win, but hey, it's possible. But more importantly, the Democratic establishment controls redistricting for her district, and it's very likely they are going to remove her district. At least that's what many people think. From all of the data we can see, it looks like she's very unpopular. And one of the biggest pitfalls for AOC lately has been bail reform, which is not popular in New York. And even Governor Cuomo is taking a hit because of it. She is now coming out saying, no, please wait. We just passed this law. We must give it time. But already we're hearing of crime sprees and or a revolving door of crime because bail reform, for those that aren't familiar, basically says that for certain low-level crimes, they can't charge a cash bond, which means someone accused of a crime can just get right out, and people in New York are not happy with this. So AOC is launching an offensive to try and keep her seat. But I think she knows the Democrats will redistrict and she will lose. The district will be gone. She won't have a seat to run for. Now she can try and run in whatever district ends up becoming her district, but then she'll be up against an incumbent, which would be pretty difficult. Already, she's called for mass census participation in an effort to keep her district safe, as well as mass voter turnout, because she says she needs 60,000 votes if she's going to win in this primary. A lot of people on the left try to claim that she's going to win because she got 78% of the vote. No, she got a tiny, tiny fraction, 17,000 approximately primary votes got her this election. And the real race is not the general. It's June 23rd. If she can't get anywhere near the amount of votes she needs to beat these other contenders, I think she's out, and I think she knows, which is why she's launching a political action committee to prop up progressive voices. Because as she goes out with a bang, she's got to do something. Ocasio Cortez, I think it's fair to say, is one of the most important members of Congress in this country. She has over 6 million followers. She's incredibly influential. Even if you don't like her, this is true. And that's why so many people talk about her all the time. She is remarkably famous. Look, like I said, whether you like her or not. And that's why we cover stories pertaining to her. But this is where it gets interesting. Ocasio Cortez doesn't seem to represent a district. A congressperson is supposed to speak to their constituents, but AOC speaks to the nation. Now, this could be great for her in more national level politics, but for now, you've got to convince New York 14 you're the right choice, and you've only convinced pockets of far left activists across the country to support you. That's your follower count. The advantage there is she's raising millions of dollars, which can really help her. But in the end, she's driven away Amazon jobs. She supported unpopular bail reform. I think her district might actually turn on her. And with so many Democratic options in this June 23rd primary available, I think she might actually lose her seat, and I think she knows it. But let's read about what's going on, because we have an editorial. This is from the editorial board of the New York Post. Now, they are a little bit conservative, but they bring up an interesting point. And I want to walk you through some of the data and show you why I think she's going to be out. But more importantly, the battle for the Democratic Party is on two fronts. At the congressional level with AOC and Bernie Sanders for the nomination. Whether or not you like her, I think people need to realize that AOC represents one of the most important battles of ideas in this country. And she will be, and her primary in June will be one of the most important elections we will see this year. I mean it, along with the presidential race. What she represents is the progressive insurgency in the Democratic Party. If she loses, that will speak volumes for their ability to take the Democratic Party. But again, Bernie Sanders is fighting on the other front, and he seems to be winning. Let's read this story from the New York Post. It's very short, but it brings up a good point. Before we get started, head over to timcast.com/donate if you'd like to support my work. There are several ways you can give, but the best thing you can do is just share this video. I say this every time. I hope we can break some echo chambers, but we probably can't. So all I really say is we can hope for it. But sharing the video really does help my channel. And also, shocking statistic, around 35% of the people who watch my videos aren't subscribed. So I guess y'all hate me. That's cool if you do and you watch and you leave and say that dude was awful. I respect that. But if you do like my content and want to see more, please consider subscribing, hitting that notification bell, because YouTube is doing everything in its power to shut down political commentary. It's one of the reasons why, me and many others launch new channels and do things like that. You get how the game works. So subscribe. But let's read this short editorial from the New York Post editorial board. They say, AOC's war on fellow Democrats likely to eliminate her House seat. Rep. Alexandria Ocasio Cortez wasn't just supporting women and announcing a slate of 7 House candidates who will get cash from her courage to change PAC. The key fact is that 2 of them are challenging incumbents. She is actually propping up people to go against the Democrats. Now, we've known this for a long time, but you have to understand that Democrats will not stand for this. Indeed, she and her allies are now targeting several longtime local lawmakers on the theory that they're every bit as much of a problem as Republicans. It's time to elect a progressive majority in Congress accountable to strong grassroots movements that push support for issues like Medicare for All, a Green New Deal, racial justice, and more. She said, my ambition right now is to be a little less lonely in Congress. Now, I don't buy that one bit because I think she'll be out. But she may not last in Congress, already in hot water for refusing to pay dues to her caucus's fundraising arm, the Democratic Congressional Campaign Committee. She's now devoting her resources instead to defeating Democrats. Don't be surprised when the established Democrats who will control redistricting after the 2020 census do their best to eliminate her seat. But it's not just about the opinion of the editorial board. It's something she said about not wanting to come back every couple years begging for your votes. In this story from Newsweek titled Ocasio Cortez launches reelection bid, saying give bail reform time, calls for turnout machine to secure win. Now we got a lot here, and I'm going to break this down. We'll move forward. Bail reform is wildly unpopular. It's creating a revolving door of crime, and New Yorkers are not happy with it. You also have the Amazon deal falling through. AOC screwed that up. But then she gloated later when they opened a marketing office with substantially less employees. She is clueless about what's going on in her own district, in her own city. Now, in this story from Newsweek is the most important quote I think I've seen. During her re-election launch speech broadcast by News 12, Ocasio-Cortez said, quote, I am not interested in just showing up every 2 years to ask our community for your vote. I am interested in making deep investments in the Bronx and in Queens. Addressing supporters at her new office in Queens, she also said her campaign had really ambitious goals for 2020, the Post reported. Here's what I see with that quote. Of course, you'll see that, populist message of I'm not just asking for your vote, just a mouth to come here every 2 years asking for your vote. I'm actually here to do good work. But it also says something interesting to me. It seems like she might actually not get the vote. She only won because of the primary. And anyone who says otherwise is lying. Even she has said as much. I won with a primary. Nancy Pelosi said that if you took a glass of water and put a D on it in her district or Pelosi's district, then it would win, which means the primary is the real race. And Joe Crowley, who was the Democrat before AOC, he was arrogant and he lost because of it. But now you've got so many other challengers going up against AOC who are serious and will probably start sinking some real money. They only need to get 18,000 votes in a district of 700,000 people. I think they can pull it off, and she knows it, which is why she said, that's our goal. We want to secure 60,000 votes in the primary election. We need to start creating a turnout machine right now. Now, it is entirely possible she pulls this off because she is a celebrity. Whether anyone likes it or not, she's famous, and that's why it's important, and that's why we cover this stuff. Listen, you get the left-wing media all the time saying, oh, the right wing is obsessed with Ocasio-Cortez, blah, blah, blah. She's got 6 million followers, dude. Partly because of the conservatives. I get it. But she really is a very prominent, famous, and influential figure. Perhaps she will run for Senate. I believe Trump said something about this. But don't be surprised when people talk about celebrities. The other day, the New York Post ran like 12 stories about her in a single day, and they were really dumb. There's some stories right now about her sequin dress, and I roll my eyes in facepalm. I don't care about her dress. I care about her influence on the political machine, and she's got it in spades. Again, I know a lot of people don't like her, but you got to accept it. She is powerful and she knows it, but she might not be popular enough in a local district to win. It's possible that because she's a celebrity, she can pull off this, 9% turnout in her favor. And based on, the fact that she has grown wildly, more people probably know who she is. I think there's a good chance she does it. Keep in mind, although there was lower turnout in the last election for her, and she only got 17,000, she only ended up getting 17,000 votes. Looking at the current state of voter turnout right now, it's like kind of wishy-washy. So we don't know if voter turnout's going to increase. We also don't know if the other Democrats with less name recognition can actually pull this off. But now I bring you to the actual data. Here's the first challenge. I'm going to show you older data and some of it's biased, so I can't tell you if it's accurate for the most part, but some of them kind of overlap with national favorability. This is a chart you're seeing right here from a political action committee designed specifically to oppose Ocasio Cortez. But they do show you the questions they ask, and I think that's fair enough. I don't know exactly how they were, what their scientific method was for tracking down likely voters. Take it for what it is. In the first question, they just say, Ocasio Cortez was elected to represent us last year. Are you familiar with her? And they found 41.73% did not know who she was. Of those, so then they were asked, do you have a favorable or unfavorable opinion? And this was shocking. Favorable was 21.37%. I don't think that's necessarily accurate. It's probably a bit higher than that, but it's at least one poll from a biased source saying as such. The reason why I find this interesting, that there's actually people saying they're going to oppose, that's a very loaded question. But people were pretty much upset. 36% supported Amazon and she chased them away, which shows me that outside of whether or not people just like her for a person, policy decisions will play a role in whether or not she will get the boot. Take a look at this poll from Axios. They say Ocasio-Cortez was recognized by 74% of voters in the poll. 22% had a favorable view. Now, this is important because this is swing states. Now, this is why I don't necessarily trust that other poll for the most part, because New York 14 is D plus 30, meaning Democrats going to run and get 30 points above the other side. I would be surprised if she had a lower favorability in a heavily, Democratic district. But it does line up with one poll, at least, at that far, right? It also lines up with a national level poll. Quinnipiac in March of last year did a poll and found that she has a negative 23 to 36% favorability rating, with 38% who haven't heard enough about her to form an opinion. 33% said she was good for the Democrats. 36% say she has been bad for the party. This is old data, and it's hard to know exactly if it translates to today. But I think her favorability is probably really low in her district because of one big issue. And that issue is bail reform. In this story from CBS 6 Albany, Siena poll, Cuomo ratings drop as does support for bail reform laws. This is important data, and we're going to try and surmise what it means for AOC. A new Siena Research Institute poll shows Governor Andrew Cuomo losing ground in the minds of Empire State voters. Governor Andrew Cuomo has a negative 44 to 50% favorability rating, according to the most recent poll. That's down from 49 to 45% in January. His job performance rating also fell. They say, quote, support for the new bail law, which took effect in January after passage as part of the budget last year, continues to plummet. In April, New Yorkers thought the new law would be good for the state by 17 points. Last month, voters said the new law is bad for the state by a margin of 12 points. Today, that margin for thinking the law is bad for New York has bulged to 26 points. And Siena College said Siena College pollster Stephen Greenberg. Check this out. AOC says we need to slow down on bail reform fixes. Whoa. 26% on the margin saying this has been bad. Hey, look, man, before the bail reform was passed, a lot of people supported it because it sounds like a really good idea for a lot of reasons. Sounds like a principled decision to make. And I got to admit, on principle, I agree with it. For those that are not familiar with what the law does, I stated it earlier, but it's basically this. If you commit a certain low nonviolent crime, they can't hold you demanding money from you. So typically when you get arrested, they say, we're going to hold you on $1,000 bond, which means someone's got to come up with 100. It's like 10%, $100. Otherwise you stay in jail. Poor people can't afford this. And it's kind of unfair that you can lock someone up under the presumption of when they're supposed to have the presumption of innocence. I like the idea from a liberty standpoint. But what happened was you immediately started seeing revolving doors of crime. One guy in the news apparently laughing and bragging about how they keep letting him out and he just keeps doing it. And now support from it has plummeted dramatically. While people are saying we do not like bail reform, Ocasio Cortez is defending it. And I got to admit, I absolutely respect her for defending it. Because like I stated, you have a presumption of innocence in this country. How we deal with high-level crime is extremely difficult. Apparently, this was not the way to deal with the problem, and it made things worse. I will not pretend to be smart enough to know how we actually solve for this while protecting civil liberties. But I still err on the side of civil liberties come first. It is better that 10 guilty persons escape than one innocent person suffer. But the people feel differently. And that's the big challenge. So I don't know how you solve this problem, and AOC is on the side of keeping it. What she said is, quote, what I would just say is that we should just give this time. It's been 5 minutes, AOC told the Post when asked if the controversial new law needed to be amended. Give it a shot. We've had almost no time since these things have passed. So I would just say in this environment with political pressure to maybe just say, let's slow down a bit. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think the answer might be you should have been slower about it in the first place. Perhaps the law was too heavy-handed. Before this, they would hold you on, bond. Maybe they should have taken select criminal offenses that they could have put in this program instead of doing a blanket sweep of many different crimes. Maybe slowly roll it out to see if it works and then stop if you've gone too far. AOC is saying, we did this big blanket sweep. Let's just sleep on it. That doesn't mean anything to the victims of these crimes. So I don't think it's fair to say you can just wait a minute as the crimes actually happen. They say Ocasio-Cortez made the remarks during a ceremony to kick off her 2020 reelection effort in Parkchester, the Bronx, on Saturday. She warned that powerful moneyed interests had assembled to thwart the law's success. Now, this is one of the weirdest things she said, and it contributes to why I think she might not keep her seat. What moneyed interests are interested in keeping people in public jails? That's the question. I get private prisons and all that stuff, but we're talking about poor people being locked up. Who's that benefiting? It's a drag on society. The moneyed interests aren't trying to bolster corporate profits. They're just saying, hey, we shouldn't let out people that easily when they commit crimes. They'll do it again. And many have. So it's a weird argument to make. They say bail reform passed by the Democratic-controlled state legislature last year prevents judges from imposing bail for low-level offenses. Critics have said it created a revolving door for criminals to reoffend while they await trial. Both New York City Mayor Bill de Blasio and Governor Andrew Cuomo have urged the legislature to amend the law. I kind of feel like the solution is just to have a speedy trial and prove your case against those you say are criminals, because whether or not someone may or may be a career criminal has no bearing, at least in my opinion, on whether or not you can hold them in lieu of cash. It's a challenging conversation. But I, for one, think perhaps this was too quick. And I'll also say, look, you heard my opinion. I'll be honest how I feel. I don't know if I'm right. And I do know there's a problem here. So I defer to smarter minds. The only thing I can do. Now, I'm not gonna slam AOC for having that position. I'm just pointing out that in the state, they don't like it. So when it comes to this primary, that will absolutely be used against her. And already New York Democrats are caving on bail reform. They're walking it back because Cuomo is tanking. The polls are tanking. The people have spoken. We do not like what you have done. And with AOC standing steadfast, again, while I can respect her for saying I'm not going to back down, it's a fair point to make. The people will say, then we will vote you out. Now, there is a kind of a sad thing to this in that sense. I think she's a little bit further to the left on that one than I am. But it's kind of sad that you might be principled and be removed because of it. But actually, maybe that's the way it should be. If you are wrong and do not represent the people, then maybe you shouldn't be their representative. If AOC wants to hold her position on principle, I can give her respect for that. But don't be surprised when she loses re-election because most people don't agree with her. Now we see her on the next battlefront. This one's funny. The Democrats are trying to just straight up remove her district. So that's why she's one of the reasons she's calling for a massive census participation at a town hall event. She needs everyone to be like, look, I'm here, so they can't redistrict her and just remove her even if she wins the primary. She's facing fights on several fronts. One of the bigger stories that makes me feel like she is preparing to actually lose is the story about this new political action committee that she's launching. Seems kind of like a kamikaze. This is exactly why they're trying to remove her. So she sees it, and this is my opinion on, I'm going to speculate on what she's doing. Seems like she knows no matter what she does, they are coming for her to get rid of her. And she's got to do whatever she can as a last-ditch effort to make sure the progressives, the far left, win. Now let's look at her district. I've pointed this out several times, but look, we have the primary. She declared candidacy for the Democratic primary scheduled on June 23rd, 2020. And that's where things are going to get interesting. So far in her primary, she's got Fernando Cabrera, Michelle Caruso Cabrera, interesting last names, James Dillon, Badrin Khan, and Jose Velasquez, who are all running against her. They might split the vote, giving her the victory. Or because they're all going to be targeting key areas and specific communities in that district, it may actually be hedging the bet on the Democratic establishment to get rid of her. All they got to do is get 17,001 votes. We don't know what AOC is going to get. She might get a lot, but primary races are particularly vulnerable because the average person does not care. Even if AOC says she wants to get massive voter turnout of 60,000, just 60,000, that's remarkably low. It doesn't mean people will actually do it. With all of these people campaigning specifically on the primary, they will target those who don't like AOC specifically. And you will probably get New York City Republicans who normally don't vote saying, I will vote in that primary just to get rid of AOC. They'll take anyone else. I think that's a strong likelihood because, as I said many times, the exact number that she won was 16,898 votes. I think AOC is on the verge of losing her seat. This could be the end. However, there have been some articles saying it's already the party of Ocasio Cortez. And if that's true, then maybe the American people, even in this district, are going to support her no matter what, because they don't want to vote for these moderates or center-left types. Now, of course, people try to claim there's centrist Democrats, and I cannot stand that phrase because it's just not true. They use this excuse to call leftists or, more left-leaning individuals centrists because they are super far left. So no, somebody who is in the middle of the left quadrant of the political compass is not a centrist just because you're a socialist. Sorry, that's not how it works. Centrists are actually balanced between the left and the right. But AOC is facing challengers who are actually fairly progressive, like Latina immigrants or otherwise. And you have some Republican challengers too. So there's a big fight ahead of her. I think the Republicans might split the vote amongst themselves, but it could be that after the primary, I'll take that back. That made no sense. What I mean is coming in to the Republican, the general election, Republicans may just rally behind their candidate, and people who hate AOC, if she wins the primary, may just rally behind the Republican. These are going to be New York City Republicans, which means they're going to be fairly liberal people. They're probably going to be pro-choice and all that stuff, which means there's probably a lot of moderates who will vote for a candidate. So let me go back. What I mean is, if the Democrats split the vote among each other, giving AOC the primary win, all of their voters may go to the general and vote for the Republican. It may be a washout. I would be really surprised, though, if AOC ends up losing her district to a Republican. But hey, we all saw what happened in the UK. So I'll leave it there. I'll make one last point that the party may already be hers. It may already be the far left. And that could be the case. Every day I hear of leftists leaving the left or former liberals leaving the left. We also have Bernie Sanders. And Jacobin magazine is saying straight up, after the Nevada blowout, it's Bernie's party now. That's the way they feel. And if that's the case, I don't see why AOC would lose. I actually would expect all these progressives to start winning. But there is one more important point, as we saw from The Economist. Progressives did miserably in their primary races, and the districts that the Donald Trump districts that flipped Democrat voted for moderate candidates. So we will see what happens. I think what we're going to see come November is just like what happened in the UK, but we'll get a glimpse because we have a primary vote. If AOC loses the primary, it will be a massive and major historical moment and upset. Because as much as you might not like AOC, she is extremely influential and famous. And the sooner you realize that, the sooner you'll be better equipped to challenge her if that's what you wish to do. I'll leave it there. Stick around. Next segment's coming up in a few minutes. Next segment's coming up at 6 p.m. YouTube.com/TimCastNews. Thanks for hanging out, and I will see you all then.